Good afternoon. Welcome to the Big Show. The Big Show brought to you by the FanDuel Casino and also brought to you by Archie's on Carson Street. Get down to Archie's home of 80-cent wings, Monday through Thursday, home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. So get down to Archie's and enjoy a great meal, great time at Archie's if you so desire. We are basically now into bye week mode, and of course the Steelers don't play this week, and of course the Steelers will play the Browns next week. As you heard, was it who was it? Ben Roethlisberger, who claimed that the Browns week is almost like another bye for the Steelers. Taking a little shot at the Browns. That's kind of funny. The Browns aren't very good. The Browns are not really all that good when it comes to what they've tried to do this year. You look at the Browns, and, of course, their offense has been terrible. Their defense has been okay at times, and that's why basically they're 1-3. I would tell you their one win against the Packers was probably more fluke than anything, but nevertheless, they won. If you look at what they've done in the rest of the weeks, they still have yet to score 20 points. They've given up 34 and 41 points. They lost, you could make an argument they lost the game to the Bengals that they should have won. But this week they play in London against the Vikings, who just stayed there apparently all week. And it will be very interesting to see how they are able to play against the Vikings. And you can compare it to the Steelers. Again, it's 9:30 in the morning. It's the only game on. So to me, you look at it and you basically say, they will have an opportunity probably to maybe get a win because the Vikings haven't looked very good. The one thing I will say is I would be willing to bet the Vikings being there all week, it'll probably be an advantage for them. So you look at that scenario and you say you'll learn something maybe about the Browns that we didn't know. That brings me back to the Steelers. Now, the Steelers, to me, are a team that's still kind of finding itself. I've often said this, and I mean this. You've got basically 4 weeks in the NFL, the first 4 weeks nowadays, to try and make it work and figure it out. Because if you think about it, with free agency, all the different new players that come in, seemingly the rosters get turned over. It really is important, I think, in so many ways for you to be able to, as a team, come together. That's what I would tell you, that, the teams need to come together to become something, right? And it's going to be interesting to see, and it's going to be interesting to figure out if the Steelers still have more growth in them, or if what we saw the last week on both sides of the ball are the kinds, or how good they're going to be, going forward. Like, what is it going to look like going forward? I think that's what you have to really, take a look if you're going to project what the Steelers are. That's what you have to look at. And I think that's where we're at when it comes to the Steelers. And I think one of the things that we're starting to see is that probably Aaron Rodgers is settling in. He's settling in to, become more comfortable with the offense. He's settling in to sort of become more comfortable with his teammates, knowing, what they're doing. I thought what we saw the other day with DK Metcalf, a couple of big plays, it was DK Metcalf's by far his best efforts and by far his most productive time. I think if you look at what they're doing in the passing game, we talk about wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. Well, if you go through targets, okay, DK Metcalf is number 1 with 22 targets. Calvin Austin, who we've talked about as the number 2 receiver, he's got 17 targets. Then you've got 16 targets for Jonnu Smith. that probably is what it should be the rest of the year. Freiermuth has 10. Jaylen Warren has 12. Kenneth Gainwell has 16. So you got basically 28 targets for your running back. A lot of that's check down stuff and all the other stuff. Really nobody else is all that relative. Darnell Washington's had 4 targets. He got 3 receptions. We can talk about Darnell Washington as being maybe somebody that they need to use more and do things more with. But by the same token, if you think about it like this, you throw the ball to your best players. And every target you throw it to somebody who's not one of your best players is one that you're taking away from other guys. In the preseason, they talked a lot about Roman Wilson. And, of course, Roman Wilson hasn't really been much of anything for them. They haven't used him much. He's only had 1 target. Maybe he becomes something different. But I don't think they're going to use him, to be honest. It's just a thing where I can tell you, I believe that if you look a little further ahead, maybe Roman Wilson will become something good. Maybe he'll become something that they can use, but maybe not. And I think that it's going to be, really, really important for him to just keep working and making himself available and making himself ready. But to me, the offense is Calvin Austin, DK Metcalf, Jonnu Smith, Pat Freiermuth, and the 2 running backs. That's pretty much your offense. And I'll be honest with you, I think one of the things that we've seen is I think that Aaron Rodgers has gotten better at incorporating all these guys and throwing the ball around and getting everybody involved. That is really what it comes down to. That's what you have to do. You have to figure out if your quarterback is on the same page with everybody else. I think what we saw in London against the Vikings is a quarterback that's really starting to get on the same page. That's what it comes down to for me. And the thing about it is, at that point, then it just becomes a little better each week. A little bit better each week. So that's where it comes down to, in my mind, a place where are the Steelers in a better place than they were? Yeah, I think they are. Are they improved? Yeah, I think they have. Is Aaron Rodgers a big part of that improvement? Yeah, I think he is. And I think that he's throwing it to the right people at the right time. I think that he's throwing it to, the guys that he needs to throw it to. He needs to make sure that he throws it to DK Metcalf more than anybody else. Because DK Metcalf is a guy they brought here to be exactly the player he's been, as he's starting to get comfortable and more incorporated into what him and Aaron Rodgers can do together. I'll say the other thing about Aaron Rodgers that I think is important. Aaron Rodgers, to me, is so much better than any quarterback the Steelers have had since Ben was in his prime, since Ben before his elbow surgery. I think that there's a lot of people who still, probably to this day, think, well, is it possible that Mason Rudolph, they would be doing the same things with Mason Rudolph? The answer is no. I think Mason Rudolph would be good enough if they needed to win a couple of games that he might be able to step in and do that. But he is not in the league of Aaron Rodgers. We've seen that now. We've seen that he's probably not a guy when it comes to Mason Rudolph is not a guy you want more than 4 or 5, 6 weeks. But look at the guys that they've had since then. And quite frankly, if you think about it, the Browns have had, 7 quarterbacks this year, I think, and they've all stunk. Now they're going to go with Dylan Gabriel, this week. The Steelers are going to have the benefit of seeing Dylan Gabriel for, a full film, a full game of him. And I think that's hilarious because I don't think he's very good. I don't know that he's going to be very good. but they're going to get a full week to look at him and figure out whether or not, okay, all the different ways they can attack him, all the different ways they can get him. And that's what I'll tell you. It really is, amazing to me that I believe the Steelers are going to have a huge advantage against the Browns next week. I think that it's going to be interesting to see this week. Even the Vikings are probably going to have an advantage just from the standpoint of they've been there for a week. So to me, by this time, like 10, 11 days from now, I think the Browns will be buried because I think they're going to lose this week and they're going to lose next week, period. And I think that, the reality is Dillon Gabriel is a guy who probably is not quite going to be good enough to play in the NFL. That's just my opinion. We'll get a chance to see that this Sunday when they play the Vikings. We'll get a chance to see what he can do because that's who the Steelers play next. The Steelers get to sit at home and watch him play and kind of figure out all the different ways that, they can basically attack him or, put him in their crosshairs. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But the offense, to me, the offense is the big thing. That's right. Someone actually reminded me it was in Dublin, not in London. I forgot all about that. They were in Dublin. And so, same thing, right? Same difference in my mind. Across the pond, that's where they're playing. Now, obviously it's two completely different cities, but they're actually going to play, at one of those things this week. They'll be in London. I can't imagine there's much difference between Dublin and London, is there, in terms of the Vikings? Probably easier to commute from Dublin to London than it is from Cleveland to London. But yes, you're right. They're playing in London this week, so it's a little different stadium, but obviously they're going to be probably in the same place. The distance between Dublin and London can't be that much. It really can't. And I think that's really going to be the key. By the way, we are brought to you by the FanDuel app. The FanDuel app is obviously your place to go and put all the bets in that you need to put in. They do props, they do parlays, they do every different way you can bet, over-unders, teasers, everything. You can do that on the FanDuel app. And, tonight there's not a whole lot going on in the world of baseball because all of the wild card series have wrapped up. Tomorrow there'll be some baseball, though. But tonight, if you're looking to bet and you're looking to get something on the FanDuel app, well, there's a whole slate tonight of college football games, including a team that's local, and that would be your West Virginia Mountaineers, who have all kinds of quarterback issues, who have struggled mightily in recent weeks. And I know they beat Pitt, but they haven't really been very, very good. And if you're looking to bet on the Mountaineers, well, you're going to get 20.5 points on the FanDuel app. So at West Virginia plus 20.5, I almost feel like that's still a steal by betting BYU because I think BYU is going to blow them out of the building. But you can look at the FanDuel app. The over-under is 47.5. That is probably an issue for West Virginia in terms of I don't know that they're going to be able to score enough to get it to 47.5. Couple of other games. South Florida plays Charlotte. That's a game. South Florida is a big, big favorite in that game. 27.5 points. That's a lot of points. But Charlotte isn't very good, as we've seen. South Florida is pretty good. That's one I might look at, the over-under, because I think South Florida might score 55 on their own. So you go to the FanDuel app, and you make sure that you download the FanDuel app. You can basically go and bet these games any which way you want to bet them. And, of course, they've got a full slate of games on Sunday to bet. They've got lots of prop bets that you can make. You can bet on, for instance, Aaron Rodgers, how many yards he throws for, how many receptions DK Metcalf have, and many, many other things. So if you're looking for some outlet to bet. Well, you don't have to just hang around and call, the local guy anymore. There's a million different ways to go, but the best place to do it is the FanDuel app. Now, you look around the NFL, I think one of the things that's interesting this week is every week I try and look at the slate of games and try and say, which games really interest me? Okay, because of my job, I guess I have to watch the Browns and the Vikings just because both of those are teams. Well, the Steelers just played the Vikings, and they're going to play the Browns twice. So you kind of watch that game. But there are a number of other games that I think are going to be really bad games that really aren't all that interesting to watch. Colts are at home against the Raiders. I think the Colts should win reasonably easily, right? The Giants and the Saints, who cares? Two terrible teams. Cowboys and the Jets, two terrible teams. Broncos at the Eagles could be a little bit interesting. The Broncos aren't quite as good as we thought they would be, but for the most part, they're at Philadelphia. I think the Eagles should probably win that game going away. Panthers, Dolphins, terrible game with terrible teams. An important game, I think, the Texans and the Ravens, two teams that people thought were going to be playoff teams, are both 1-3, which means one of them is going to be 1-4 after this game. The Ravens have to figure out a way to win and do so with Cooper Rush playing. So there's some interest in that game. But again, right now, those two teams have not been very, very good. The Cardinals against the Titans, two bad teams. The Seahawks and the Bucs is a decent game. The Lions against the Bengals, that's a terrible game. I think the Lions will blow them out of the building. The Commanders at the Chargers, I think it's an important game for the Chargers to get back and win. The Bills at home against the Patriots, I don't think there's any interest in that game. Really, the game that, seems like it might be a reasonably good game is on Monday night. It's the Patriots. It's the Chiefs against Jacksonville. And Jacksonville's a team that's probably a little better than we thought so far. That's really what it comes down to. I just feel like that's really where it comes down now. And the thing about the Ravens, their injury report, obviously you've got Lamar Jackson has been declared out and a number of other important players as well. So they've got to find a way to survive if they want to stay in the race, because I think if you fall to 1-4, 1-5, you got a real problem. I just feel like that's where we're at. And, so that is the weekend in a nutshell. Now then, we've got the Penguins starting up on Tuesday, and I wrote about this a little bit in the paper today. I think the Penguins are interesting from this standpoint. Kyle Dubas is a guy that was hired 2 years ago. He was brought here to do a job, which was rebuild the team. And I think that, for the most part, that's what he wanted to do. But he was also a little bit hamstrung by the fact that he was told basically to rebuild the team while also trying to win games, which you can't do. You can't do both. You can't have it both ways. But they wanted him to win games because the older guys were still around, because Mike Sullivan was still around, because they thought that, they could find lightning in a bottle and all this other stuff. Guess what? Didn't happen. Didn't happen at all. And that's where it comes down to. And I think, honestly, the Penguins' ability to rebuild has been slowed down by the fact that they've also wanted to try and win. Can't do that. Cannot do that. But I think that's outside of Kyle Dubas's reach. I think, you had the older guys, the star guys. I get it. You wanted to take another shot or two with them before you closed the book on them. But the reality is you should have closed the book on them long ago. And probably 3 years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago. So now you got a problem. Because now you've got, a situation of where you've basically wasted 2 years trying to chase glory that isn't there. You've wasted it. So now you've got to figure out a way to win. How do you go back? Well, I think one of the things that's very clear is they're finally basically going to allow him to rebuild the team. There's a lot of young guys. I mean, if you look at the roster of guys that are probably going to make the team, most of them you might not have heard of many of them, unless you're a diehard. They've got a lot of young players on their team right now. And I think that when you look at that, you combine it with the fact that he didn't really make any moves to get better this offseason. They didn't go out and sign any, Eric Carlson type players. They didn't do anything really at all to, try and, we're going to trick it up a little bit for one more year to see if we can take one more shot at glory with these guys. They didn't do any of that. He has compiled, 34, 35 draft picks over the next 3 years. I mean, I look at what they're doing and I say it's basically, it really is an important, time for the Penguins to rebuild. They still have some older guys on their team they got to try and, play around. But I think when you've got Dan Muse as your coach, it's pretty clear to me what they're going to try and do. It's pretty clear to me that they're going to try and rebuild because that's why they hired him. He's a developmental coach who's been very, very good at developing players. He's been very, very good at, bringing along teams. Now, the Penguins have to make one or two more moves to get to a point where they're definitely, now we are at a point where we are rebuilding. And, that includes dumping guys. I mean, I know we fall in love with guys, but, Brian Rust and Rickard Rakell, those two guys do nothing for this team except for give it just enough chance maybe to win 5 or 6 more games and maybe fall into a place where they're out of the lottery. That's what I would tell you. It's just crazy to me. Like, you got to get a couple of those guys out of here to make sure this team is bad enough to have a chance, right, to go and get the top pick in the draft. Because apparently in this draft, there's not just the top guy, but there's 2 or 3 other guys that could change change your franchise forever. And that's where I would say it is important to keep your eye on the prize. If you're a Penguin fan, you're used to winning, right? You're used to winning. You're used to basically, the Penguins having a chance to go to the playoffs. They're probably not going to do that this year, maybe not even next year. But if you turn over the roster completely, you find a next franchise guy, and I'm not saying that, you got Mary Lemieux or Sidney Crosby, but, those are 2 guys that have changed, obviously, the franchise from the day they arrived. You go do that, you probably put yourself in position where you can start winning again, and I think that's what people want. I think you can contrast that to the Pirates, who seem to be stuck in the same place and don't seem to have a plan to get out of it. It's completely different. Penguins have a plan. Now they just need to execute it. Pirates don't have a plan. Who knows what they're doing? That's the thing. Who knows what they're doing? The Pirates. The Penguins, on the other hand, they've got a plan. So to me, I think it's one of those things that's really, really important for Penguin fans to sort of hang in there for a couple of years to see what exactly it's going to look like in a year or two. And that's where I would tell you, this year, I'm not going to judge them at all. I'm not going to judge them at all. I'm just going to see what they do. But they're probably, in many ways, I think at least, they're probably going to be a team that needs to unload a couple of players before they're in full rebuild mode. That's just the way it is. Now then, you've got some college football games tomorrow. We talked about West Virginia. We knew it was going to be a bad year for them, and it is a bad year. Then you look at Pitt. Pitt probably already, even though we're 4 weeks in, is facing a must-win game tomorrow against Boston College. If they lose tomorrow, everything falls apart. They've got obviously some issues that they need to figure out. Mostly the quarterback position. Mostly the quarterback position. Eli Holstein, they brought him here from Alabama. He's supposed to be their guy. Clearly, he hasn't really figured it out. He hasn't played well. I don't know that they've used him to their best of their ability. I think when you look at it, it's just going to be a game they gotta win, and he's got to figure some things out. I think their offense is just not very good right now. I just don't think that what they're doing. Maybe it comes down to the quarterback just isn't that good, whatever. But they've got to get to a point where they start winning all these games they're supposed to win, because it becomes a very long season if you can't. Speaking of which, Penn State plays UCLA. This should be a complete blowout. If it's a close game, there's a problem. I can't understand, how this game is even going to be close. UCLA is a mess. They've completely, quit on the season in so many ways. They've fired the coach. The people want to get rid of the athletic director out there. There's nobody that goes to the games. There's no interest in UCLA football. If Penn State makes this a close game, it's probably, to me, an indictment of Penn State. They've got to get back up on get back up on and figure out how to win. At any rate, we are now basically talking about this weekend. And, of course, the game's always on at Archie's. Get down to Archie's on Carson Street. Archie's, home of 80-cent wings Monday through Thursday. Home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. So get down to Archie's. Have a great meal. When you get down there, tell Archie I said hello. We are basically now looking ahead to this weekend in baseball. Now that the wild card rounds are over, and by the way, I'm tired of all the people crying and whining about the best of three formats. Okay? I mean, it is what it is. Now we've got interesting series, the Cubs and the Brewers, the Dodgers and the Phillies, the Yankees and the Blue Jays, the Tigers and the Mariners. I think to me, all of those games get started tomorrow. And it's going to be really a lot of fun to watch baseball over the next few days if you love baseball. To me, people crying and whining about, well, they didn't like the one-card wild card. Now they don't like the three-card wild card. I mean, at some point you have to basically have a format and just stick with it. And you can't cry if you don't like the results, which is what's happening. The Padres, for instance. You know what? They went all in at the trade deadline. They basically got a bunch of guys. They spent a bunch of money on their payroll. They lost. They didn't lose because of the umpires. They didn't lose because of the format. They lost because their four top players, their top four hitters all stunk. That's why they lost. I mean, the thing about the playoffs is you have to perform when the lights are on. So I'm okay with a 3-game best of 3 format. I think it's fine. So you got baseball, you got football, you got football weekend, you got baseball, you got hockey starting up, all of that stuff. You can get down to Archie's, and Archie will take care of you. Sunday, in fact, Archie's open all day Sunday during the NFL season. So get down to Sunday. That is the big show for the weekend edition. We're going to do it again on Monday. Hopefully Monday we'll be able to talk a little bit more intelligent about Dylan Gabriel and what he was able to do on Sunday. But until then, enjoy your weekend.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.